Just got back from the last two opens for Division One, the Upper Chesapeake Bay and the St. Lawrence River. Ended up getting a check in both of those tournaments, which was really good. But most importantly, I qualified for the Bassmaster EQ Series at the end of the year, and that was a super big goal of mine coming into this year. But I had plenty of GoPro issues and stuff like that, so I wasn't able to get a video or proper video for the Upper Chesapeake Bay. So just gonna do a little video recapping on my practice, tournament, and the baits I caught them on during that tournament. So coming into practice, I kind of knew the general area that this tournament was going to go down in. Basically the whole field knew it too, and it was the Susquehanna Flats. It's the best grass on that whole system, and the biggest population of bass lives there. It's about maybe a 10 to 12 mile area just in a circle just outside of the Northeast River. Was here for an open 3 years ago as a co-angler, and it was super tough. I think I caught like 4 bass in 2 days as a co, and everything went down in the Northeast River. That's where basically all the top 10 was. But this tournament was completely different weights wise and locations wise. So coming into practice, I basically spent all my time on the Susquehanna Flats trying to find key areas in there, and I was able to catch 15 to 17 pounds a day in practice and felt like home, just kind of picking apart grass, and it was super fun. Water was clean in that area. I also spent some time in the Northeast River. I only caught 1 bass in there, had one little spot, so I really didn't give it much time as I did the Susquehanna Flats. So that was practice basically. I mean, caught a pretty good amount of fish each day. Last day of practice was kind of slow, but ended up, getting some clues there. So fast forward to day 1 of the tournament, I take off, and I'm a later boat, so I'm like, okay. So I started on where I caught my biggest fish in practice, and that was like a rock point, and there was a high spot, and it was the start of the grass line, and it was like the most different looking spot I found in practice. And started there, and there was a good amount of boats just fishing that grass edge. No one was on that spot, so I started there, and ended up not really getting anything, and I was like, okay, looks like I gotta make a move. So I moved to another area close to that, and was able to catch like a 12-incher, get my first keeper of the day. I'm like, okay, and that tide was starting to come up and flip, so I knew that first day of practice, I had an area closer to the Susquehanna River that I caught I had a bunch of bites. I had 3 bites in a really small area, which is good for practice, and pulled up in there, and I was able to catch my limit fairly quick, and then went through that area a little bit more, and I think I called once or twice. I had like 11 pounds, 12 pounds. And then went back out on the actual main part of the Susquehanna Flats. I had a little grass area there. It was like a ditch on one side, grass line, and then it kind of tapered off again. It made like a really nice little edge right there. And a lot of guys were there, a lot of boats, which was whatever. You got to fish in boats on the open, sadly. But spent my majority of my day over there, and was able to cull up to 14 pounds. I caught a 3.5 at the end of the day, which was pretty helpful. Came into weigh-in, I was in 61st with 14 pounds. So not too bad, not too good. Not the worst start I've ever had for an open, that's for sure. It's feeling good going into day 2. So going into day 2, I was an earlier boat number, and what did I remember? I started on the same spot I filled out my limit day 1, and it was a lot dirtier. Wind was kind of chugging in there, and I didn't catch a bass. I was like, okay, that's not good. And went to my primary area where I caught most of my weight this first day, and I caught one right off the bat. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good. And there was probably like 50 boats around me in that area, and I don't know, kept fishing around there and didn't catch anything. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good. So I kept fishing a bunch of areas, seeing what was going on, and the tide was an hour back, so high tide was an hour back, and my best bite was that falling tide. So was probably the rest of most of the field. So I kept milling around and fishing around. And then 11 o'clock or so rolls around, and as a tournament fisherman, it's not that good to have one fish at like 11:30. So I knew I had to make an adjustment, and I ended up going shallower, and that water was a little bit cleaner. There was a lot of boats already there, but that's what you got to deal with, and it's grass, so that's the equalizer. If there's a lot of boats around, you can still get bit. So went in there and I was able to catch like a 4-pounder on a speed worm real quick, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then I fished there for maybe 10 or so minutes. I'm like, okay, I got another spot that kind of was similar, a little bit shallow. I ran there and I was able to catch like a 3.5 on my 5th cast on a speed worm. I'm like, okay, starting to work out. We got 3 for some, you know, 8, 9, 10 pounds, probably 10 pounds, I don't know, not that much. And I was able to fish around there and didn't get another bite at all. And I was like, okay, let's go back to where I started. That tide dropped and that water may have been cleaner, and the water was cleaner. And 10 or so minutes later, after setting down on that spot, I caught a 410, and it's like, all right, we got plenty of time, we can do this. And about 5 minutes later or so, my rod loaded up and I finally got my 5th keeper at like 12, and I was like, oh my gosh, just shows how quick it can happen. And was able to fish around some more, and I got another like 2.5 pounder and a couple other smaller ones in that area. And there wasn't as many boats there, which helped a lot too, I think. But I ended up weighing 15-14, I believe, the second day, which was a super big jump, and I was able to climb up into 34th place, I believe, and get a check and some very important points, because that tournament was a lot of pressure for me. But couple baits that did it for me. The bait that did most of the heavy lifting was a good old 3/8 ounce jackhammer, green pumpkin. As you could see, it's pretty gnarled up. Was throwing that bait on B.A.S.S Orochi XX Diablo Spec R. It's a 7.2. I love this rod for chatterbaits. It's freaking awesome. Got a Shimano Chronarch on here. It's a 7.3-1, I believe. I've had this rod and reel for years, and it's been great. And just a good old 15-pound trilene fluorocarbon. Not really much else to say about that. And then the other thing, this basically carried me day 2 through the good old Magnum Speedworm from Zoom. This is watermelon red or something. Yeah, watermelon red. Pretty self-explanatory. Got 17-pound fluorocarbon on this good old Shimano SLX. I got a 6:3 gear ratio on there. I kind of like that 6:3 for the Speedworm because I was able to kind of work it a little bit slower, help me slow down. I got this on a B.A.S.S Levante Tour Versatile rod. Love this thing for whatever, honestly, as the name goes. I was throwing this Speedworm on a 5/0 hybrid worm hook from Gamakatsu. The second day it was super windy, so I switched up to that 1/4 ounce, and I was able to kind of just get down a little bit further in the water column, which, I mean, helped me get a couple more bites, I think. But it was a super simple approach for this tournament, and super happy to get a check and everything else, and was able to adjust. So just wanted to give you guys a little video about how I caught them in this tournament. So thank you.